I have to say, Timmy, that you have been one of the great inspirations to many, many guides in Islamorada through the years. I think with your tournament success, you kind of raised the bar for everybody, especially in the bonefish tournaments. And if anybody really wants to achieve greatness, and if you want to win a tournament back in the day, they had to beat Timmy Klein. And we're in your beautiful home surrounded by Millard Wells watercolors, which was the greatest trophy that you could win.
Yes, sir.
During all these tournaments. Tell me about Millard. I remember Millard with the red scarf, he was almost like, who's that great artist that had the big mustache?
I can picture him. I don't remember who it was.
Him out right now.
But Millard and Jeannie, or his wife that ran the show, was they were icons together. And starting out in this business, I was terrified in a tournament because I never thought I could win one, knowing what everybody caught every day, the amount of fish. But I truly got into the tournaments to win a Millard Wells. I mean, he was a family friend. He came over to our house for dinner, and just an icon. And I just loved the guy, and his work was just exquisite. It was like my favorite. You're talking 35 plus years ago, and or even longer, before I was a guide. And I just wanted to win a Millard Wells. It
was bigger than the tournament itself in many ways.
I thought so, and plus he was like the MC. He's when we did the Calcuttas and stuff like that, he had all these corny jokes and little sayings, and we sort of dreaded as years went on as he started the tournament because it would take forever. We're all tired, and we were like, we want to get this banquet over, but it would take an hour and a half to go through 25 of us, bidding on us and this and that.
And then it evolved to Chuck Brodsky, who was just
I heard
ruthless.
He was so raw.
Oh, ruthless. He would fry you. And now you've got Wardo that does
Wardo's pretty good.
Oh, he's really
Wardo's
good.
great, yeah.
But that's part of the tournament scene. It's the brotherhood, the idiosyncrasies of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it all comes out, at the opening ceremony night. But anyway, your success is quite profound, and you fish with a lot of great guides or other anglers.
And it was more about the guides to me. You had 5 or 6 tournaments when I started. You had the bonefish tournaments. You had the spring fly in April, September fall bonefish tournament, and the all tackle in October. And then you had the Holly tournament, the ladies tournament, and the Gold Cup tournament. And those were your tournaments back then. And you fished it, to beat the guys. It wasn't really about the anglers to me. It was about trying to save face and trying to stay up somewhere in the tournaments where you're recognized. And you're petrified, but you wanted to beat the guide. You didn't give a shit about an angler.
Yeah, because those were your peer pressures.
Yes. Yes.
Who were the guides you really feared in those bonefish tournaments?
Well, naturally, Steve Huff, Harry Spears, Eddie Whiteman, Branham, I don't know. I have to look at the names here. There was a lot of guides, that were, and then so many guides that you just talk to shit with at the dock, and I caught, a bunch of 12-pounders. One guy caught a 14-pounder, and this and that, and you're like, wow, how am I going to
beat
any of these guys, when I started off, and I was just like, all right, let's just go,
Go fishing.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into that, but let's just take a step backwards to your high school years and growing up here in the Keys, running your boat to school.
Yes.
Docking at Flutie's house.
Yeah, Albert. Yeah,
so tell me about growing up here.
My father, he wasn't much of a fisherman. I didn't have fishing in my blood. My dad owned a dive boat, started treasure diving, back in the 60s, I presume. He was actually a Marine Patrol officer from Biscayne Bay to Duck Key. And I never saw him, when I came around. He had already quit that, I believe. I just remember seeing his badge and his gun and stuff like that. And became a very big treasure diver, and finding all the Spanish galleons up and down here in Key Largo to Islamorada. And then he had people taking interest in doing that. So he would, hey, Bobby, can I go dive with you? But he needed to make money also. So he just started taking people, charging them to go diving treasure and stuff like that, which was really cool. And growing up, my brother and I went, quite often with them. Our old house that we grew up here in this neighborhood, I literally grew up across the street here in born in 61, and they bought that house in 57. My brother was born in 58. We were both born in Miami, but there was no hospital here,
Sure.
though. It still isn't. But my dad was a big diver and treasure hunter. So in our second house in the neighborhood, we dove up all the Ballast Stones, and he made a big Ballast Stone wall. Had some gentleman make this beautiful wall.
And what's a ballast stone?
Ballast Stone is what they put in the belly of a ship, of a Spanish galleon. Okay. And the ballast stones went in the belly of the boat for ballast, and
So it wouldn't rock back and forth.
well, not they wouldn't rock. They would set them so if they're going one way, and they needed the boat to tilt a little bit more, they would, like a trim tab.
Shift them.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the ballast stones were anywhere from yay big to this big. It was like river rocks, I would assume they were.
Cannonballs.
Like wait.
Yeah.
Like not cannonballs. Cannonballs would rust, and cannonballs were for protection. And we found thousands of cannonballs, musket balls, pistols, swords, dividers
Wow.
for charts.
You found pistols and swords.
Yes, sir.
Now,
My
was he-
father did.
Wow.
My father, we found tons of stuff, coins, thousands of pieces of 8 and 6 and 4s, pillar dollars.
And where was Mel Fisher in on all this? Were they?
He wasn't. He was a famous treasure hunter, obviously.
Right. Did they ever work together? in any way?
No, we never worked together. And the other famous guy was Art McKee. That across the street, which is the Montessori school, there was Art McKee's Sunken Treasure, and that was an icon back in the day growing up. It's the old castle, and he had a museum there that you could go and 3 or 4 times a day do a tour of it and stuff like that. I used to get dropped off there as a kid in grade school. And, I was in 5th grade and get dropped off there. Back then, there was no traffic. The parents didn't give a shit where you were dropped off. You walk across the street and come home, Today,
How
I'm
nice.
petrified to try to walk across the street now.
Or a little drive your car across that
I'd
U.S.
much rather
one.
be in a car,
Right.
with airbags all around you. Yeah, no, it's scary. But it was quite the day of growing up down here and going diving with my dad. And there was a brick pile off at Tavernier Key, and we built a brick steps to our front door and down to the walkway to the driveway. And my dad put a piece of 8 and a step in the back, a porch, in the concrete, which we took out recently when we sold the house. My brother got that. And
what exactly was that again?
A piece of 8.
What does that mean?
It's just a coin.
Oh,
it's probably
that
the
he
most
had found.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
probably the most popular size coin. I don't know what it was worth back in the day, but it was just like a quarter and a nickel
cool.
and a penny. You had different numbers, 4, 6, and 8s, and then the pillar dollar was a round one. The other ones were sort of not perfectly shaped.
Right.
And the coolest thing that he found was a little solid gold 24 karat wicker basket, about yay big. And he opened it up, and it had, I think, 4 sets of wedding rings.
Wow.
And that were all, and my mother, got one of those, when they got, when they got married, and but it was, he had all that displayed in Ocean Reef. My dad had a dive shop at Ocean Reef in 1970 to the mid to late 70s. where he ran his dive boat business. It started in Islamorada, Pelican Cove, when it was just a half a dozen little hotel rooms and stuff, and then went to Ocean Reef. So I learned Ocean Reef. That's where I actually did my first charter at like 12 years old. My little Boston whaler took some lady out catching her snappers and just had I made $25. Man, this is, probably like 1972 or something like that. I'm like, wow, this is cool.
So who taught you? Who got you into fishing? I mean, most kids have somebody, a grandfather or a mother or somebody.
That's interesting. When you grew up here, the water was your playground. So to kill time after school or something, because I'm not going to do homework. I hated that stuff. I would.
You can curse on this podcast.
Yeah, good. You know how clean I am, so don't worry about that. Don't worry. This will be G. We just fished off the docks, down the shorelines, the bridges, whatever you could do. Mostly the docks when you're really young, just laying there. I'd go get a bonita from some offshore boat and cut it up and lay on the dock down there in 100-degree on the pavement, just like watching that big snapper come up and eat that ballyhoo chunk. And you lost half of them because they went around a marker or something like that. So it was just great just doing that as a real youngster. And growing up here, I knew a lot of these famous captains. I got some of them written down here.
Jimmy Albright, Cecil Keith.
No, those were regular fishermen, but Eddie Whiteman for sure.
Oh yeah,
Eddie Whiteman was, and I grew up with his kids. As a young age. Jack Roberts, which a lot of people probably never heard of Jack Roberts. Jack Roberts was like 6'8". His son Eddie was one of my best friends growing up. Spent a ton of time growing up at his house, and Jack was a giant guy. His Jack's wife Jackie was the school bus driver, and so I spent a lot of time. And he was just one of those great legendary bone fishermen. He told me stories about catching snook and redfish and trout, and it was just, it's just like every cast and, some of the pockets and bites out back, So he got into bone fishing. He had an old Willie Roberts, with a little 70 Evinrude on it. And I remember fishing and starting to guide and see where he would fish. And I'm like,
you're stealing his spots.
Yeah, you could say that.
But you're 12.
No, but that was later on in life when I was starting to play more and get around. And you had Dick Williams, one of the great bone fishermen, George Hummel, another legendary guy, Bob Reinemann, and so I knew all these guys growing up, because it's,
small quarters down here.
Yeah. So I grew up with their kids. Craig Brewer's father, Jim. I remember being dropped off there as a, 12 or 13 years old at Craig's house. And his dad would have us a couple spinning rods ready for us with little wooden plugs. And we'd cast a 5-gallon bucket for hours. Most of them are strung up across the telephone lines, and just sit there all day. And then Jim would come home in the afternoon and like look up there and says, "Looks like I need to cut some more plugs for you boys," and Craig's dad had, I remember, I haven't talked to Craig about this forever, but I remember he had like big sideburns,
like lamb chops.
Yeah, like Elvis, it was like, he was a man's man, just a great guy, His mother Shirley was epic, great woman, and loved them to death. So just growing up here was, what a playground.
So you guys are just, you're surrounded by water, and you've got fishing rods, and you're learning, the early stages of putting bait on a hook and tying knots. Do you remember your first boat?
Well, yeah, the first boat was like a piece of shit Boston whaler that was like a mold of a boat. And they were rental boats where my dad worked on Pelican Cove, and we put 25s on them, and we didn't fish. We just rode around and got in spray fights and this and that, and
keep going.
And so we, as kids, that's all we did. That was our bicycles, basically. We
mode of transportation.
Yeah, we just rode around, and that's how we played. And we threw tennis balls at each other and sprayed each other, wait for a yacht coming in. I live right next to Plantation Yacht Harbor, which is now Founders Park. And we used to sit up at my pool, a whole bunch of us in our little boats, and just sit there in the afternoon waiting for
waves,
sport fishermen to come in. And man, we saw that sucker come in. We go ying 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 and poof, jump these wakes, probably scaring the hell out of these.
Did you ever sink a boat?
No, but we had many engines fly off.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
what was that like?
Oh, this fell off the boat. Ying, oh shit, and then you gradually pull it up because your gas line was still hooked to it, And
so it didn't go to the base or the bottom of the ocean.
It's only 7 feet deep out there, So you'd get that up, and then we, get a lobster line, and we'd tie it from cleat to cleat, and wrap it on there. So when it did fall off, because back then they didn't bolt the engine on, you just had those little things that you turn, but you didn't have it bolted on, so they fell off like commonly, and back in those days, you'd just take it home, you'd rinse it off, you take the plugs out, you get some CRC back in the day, which is now WD-40, and you spray that shit in there, crank it a few times dry, and put the plugs back in. All right, let's go, and off we friggin' went, and we just, we lived in our boats growing up, we slept out at night, and then when I was about 14, my dad, he knew how I loved, out in the boat and beginning to fish and stuff like that, but snorkeling, going to go get lobsters all the time. And so this cool little boat, dark blue, black and blue, indoor, outdoor carpet on it. The lines of a super skiff. It had a hole in the bow, which they thought a brilliant idea was shove your push pole in it, which doesn't work to this day because it makes so much damn noise, and your pole's straight up and down, So it didn't come with a platform. It had a little side console, 2 little seats, and one on the bow, little things that, you can buy them to this day with a little pipe, and you set your seat on there, and you could spin around, and they were garbage. And so I had that boat for a couple of years, and so now I'm like 15, and I'm like, Mom, can I take it to school? She goes, yeah. So where are you going to park it at? Well, I'm going to take it up to Al Flutie's house. Al Flutie lived right on the bay side of Coral Shores High School, where we all went to school.
And that's Glenn's father.
Yes. And so she goes, no problem, So I'd go to school and pull up to the dock. I went and talked to Al about it, and says, yeah, no problem, son. And I'd get there in the morning at, like 7 a.m. and school starts at like 7:15 or 7:30 in the morning. It's, sun's just coming up. And Al would be just sitting out there on the back porch smoking cigarettes, having a cup of coffee. I go, how you doing, Al? He goes, great, Timmy. Just winding down. And I'm like, winding down? Yeah, it was a fun night last night. Just having a cigarette and getting ready to go to bed. So he was out all night doing whatever. He was a fishing guide also, and he had his boat right there at Plantation Yacht Harbor, So, growing up with that and knowing Glenn really well and a handful of kids. And so it was just really fun going to school by boat. And then it became a problem. I started on those nice days, like, wow, just forget about school and just go riding around. Back then gas was shit,
25 cents.
Yeah, 40-something cents a gallon. We had our own tank down here at the end of the street.
Now, did you understand what a bonefish was back then?
No.
You just liked your
boat. A snapper. I knew what a snapper was. I could get dinner, or I could go catch some in lobsters. And I used to take my brother out, and we'd just go out and catch some snappers and lobsters, walk around with a bucket, and try to sell them. And I remember coming to this house as a kid, and I go, Robert, let's see if they want. Robert was afraid to go knock on the door, because they might say no. I'm like, they're going to say yes or no. We'll go to the next house, So I had to knock on all the doors.
Robert didn't want to knock on the door.
No, he didn't want to. Yeah, so
you were selling snapper door to door.
Snapper and lobsters. Yeah, you'd make a few bucks, plenty of money to fill the tanks back up. That's all you're doing, just trying to make money to put gas back in the boat to go fishing and riding around and goofing off. And it was really a fun time. And I turned that boat into a fishing machine as life went on, and working every day, and a little luck on maybe finding a bail,
Tell me about that.
Oh, you just...
you mean a square grouper?
Yeah.
Would you go out and look for them?
Sometimes, yeah.
How often would you find them?
Oh, I didn't find many, but they came at the right time,
And you knew when they came?
Well,
You knew
later,
the timing of everything?
What's going on here?
that time of life, when getting later on in the high school and stuff, you knew everybody that was doing it. It was quite the business down here.
Right.
It was very interesting, and all these people are still really dear friends. That went away for a very long time, a lot of them. But it was like I found some and sold them to my neighbor at the end of the street. I remember going out with friends. It was probably 1980, and take a boat ride. And two of my best friends from high school. One went into the Army, one went to college. They came back for the summer break and after boot camp, and we're heading out back. And we're like halfway. We just wanted to go out and catch dinner. I had my boat tricked out now. Now I've ripped it apart and put a deck on it. It looked like a normal skiff, a polling platform, painted it a certain way with paint that my dad told me how to put a certain type of sand in it, so it'd be a non-skid,
yeah,
and just epic, and really tits the boat out, just beautiful, and way ahead of my time on like a Hell's Bay or whatever's out there back in the day. I was way, before it was like an aluminum boat, but this boat was quiet. It beat the shit out of you. It was flat bottom. It was made out of compressed balsa wood. But strong as hell. Had two boxes in the back that were flotation. You know how a certain Hell's Bay started that way. Mm-hmm. And it had a little tiny live well. And we're cruising out back. And I'm like, whoa, look at that. And the thing pulled in 5 inches of water. And we're like, that's a bale. And my friends didn't know what to do. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to get that thing. I couldn't get the boat to it. It was up in really shallow water. And must have been kicked out of a plane in the wrong spot or something. Like, okay.
How old were you?
Danelle dropped it.
I was 19 or 20, 19. And so, yeah, John, that makes sense. I thought it was marathon, but anyway.
I thought it was Craig Key. I just got a little too far to the west.
Oh, give the guy a break.
Oh, God. You're going to get smashed on that one.
So I swam it back to the boat. And I had my boat designed where you open the hatch, and we had 6-gallon gas tanks. So we pulled out a 6-gallon tank out of the hatch, and this bale fit in there. It's probably weighing 40 pounds, maybe 50 pounds. I don't know. And it fit in there perfect. I'm like, okay. So we ran it in to the end of the street here, and I was living up in Key Largo, and so I hid it in a cooler. I actually stopped and showed some friends that played a joke on me one time, but anyway, that's another day. And so we bluster back out into the bay, going by the same zone, which we didn't see. There's another one. I'm like, holy cow. And I'm like, I ain't taking this sumbitch back in. We want to go fishing.
Right.
So we took the fuel tank out, put the bale under the hatch, and off we went. And it was like Pollock Keys, and we go through Whipray, and now we're heading out toward Pelican, and we're going through Pelican Key, and I got 3 spinning rods with like 8-pound test, and with Millie bucktails, which is the bucktail back in the day, and we're cruising through the islands, and a little bit of water in this boat, with a small prop on it, and cruising through there, and like the size of this house, an acre of friggin' redfish just boiled up on the surface, and man, I threw it into neutral, shut it off, trimmed it up, and we're just coming, and redfish just boiling everywhere. And everybody picked up a rod and triple header, like 8-pound redfish, really nice sized redfish. And I'm like, okay, boys, we landed all 3, threw them in the live well. So we got dinner. Let's go get rid of this other bale, So as I leave the neighborhood, and I pulled my boat out because we got a little boat ramp down here. And as I pull out of the neighborhood, there was like a smuggler that lived up here and a commercial fisherman. And I go up there and knock on the door and I go, hey, man, I got a couple bales. Oh, great. Where are they at? This is, well, they're at my house. Well, actually, one's in the back of my truck. Hey, come back later tonight around 10, drop them off. So I come back around 10, throw them in his garage, and he goes, he says, come back in the morning around 10. Okay. So the next day, I go back and knock on his door, and he goes, hey, yeah, no problem here. And there's like the old Winn-Dixie bag, just full of freaking cash, I'm like, oh, what's in there? He goes, 20 grand. I go, no shit. Oh, awesome. Good day fishing, Still my best day fishing, And I'm like, all right. So I gave both my friends $5,000 each, kept 5 to me, 5 to my boat, and everybody was happy.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So
was that an incentive to
do it again?
Keep on this path?
No, but what it did was put enough money, in my sock drawer to take a little time off, because I was working my ass off ever since I was 15, at gas stations, working on my father's dive boat. And so I started, going fishing every day. I was still working some, but I almost took a year off and just, I was still living at my mom's house,
But that allowed you the freedom to go out there and explore and fish.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I learned that bay, in that little boat, I remember taking my brother out and Brewer out all the time. I mean, it was flat bottom. Kreger still blames me for his bad back. It beat the shit out of you.
Well, you talk about your brother. What was your relationship like with Robbie?
Robert and I have always had a great relationship. He started in the tile business, after, he went to college for a little bit, and then he started into laying tile, ceramic tile, and was incredible at it and picked up a clientele really quick. And then we're skipping, but anyway, as I become a captain in 1986, and lots of years of fishing, my brother had this business going, and I would help him, unload trucks and help him on everything, putting the lines down and then handing him tiles and then doing, taught me how to grout floors and all that. I'm like, God, this sucks. Now I'm a captain and I'm still helping him because I still need to make money. And I'm like, God, this is no fun. Please, somebody call me. I want to go to fishing and go to work, And so Robert had a badass business, but after 10 years of me being a guide and having so much fun and meeting so many people and just really digging what I do, I was like, dude, you got to do this. He's like, his knees hurt, his shoulders, his back, and I'm like, I'm now making pretty good money, but having a lot more freaking fun than him. And finally he saw the light and became a guide.
He's a lovely human being.
Yeah. He's the good Klein. As John Donnell would say.
He's the good Klein.
Did he have as much knowledge as you did, or did you?
Shit, yeah. Oh yeah.
You didn't help him out along the way?
No, God, no. No, he was great. No, he was very good at it. I remember I was just learning how to fly fish before we became guides, and we'd go out and, I fished a lot with him, and I fished a lot with Kreger, or the three of us would fish together, and we'd fish in all these little tournaments, the spin out and swamp. Oh God, what was the name of it? Not the Swamp Guides Ball, but the Swamp Out. It was like the two biggest redfish, and I think Craig and Robert and I fished those. We won it every year, and they just, screw it. Why run this tournament when these kids win it every friggin' time?
Do you see that happening in this day and age with the young Polly Rosses and the?
Well, I see it. I see it with Jarrett and Richard mostly. Those guys are now becoming
refined. They are refined.
Those guys are special. I love those two. They're very different in personality. They're incredible fishermen. What I like about them the most is is they go both ways, as in both sides. Well, I was like my son.
Sexually?
Yes, for sure. I mean, Jarrett digs it. You that big guy. No.
Right? I told you about this guy.
Oh,
right?
Shush. I don't
Let's
right there.
Let's
get a layup.
Let's get back to the layup.
But anyway,
Sorry, Jared.
What's so good about Jarrett and Richard is they, like me growing up, they like the bigger stuff too, offshore. They got big boats, center consoles. So they're not just going out there every day throwing a fly for a big tarpon or a big bonefish. They are. The weather's different and this and that, and they talk to the people. Hey, this is the day we need to go to the patches and catch muttons or sailfish or go do something different and just go have fun.
They can do that.
Oh, they're great at it.
Were you a prodigy like they were?
Yeah.
I see that with you because of your ability now, and it translates to where greatness came from. Greatness is not grown or born overnight. When you see any great athlete, they were a great athlete when they were 8, 9, and 10 years old. And I know that with what I've seen with you and fishing with you, you don't just find all of a sudden greatness overnight. No. When did you first realize that you had this knack to find fish, feed fish, and catch great animals?
It all starts, I think it starts with my father, with a work ethic and don't screw up or, finish your job, because if you don't, you're going to have to finish it again, start all over. And reading the water, growing up on my dad's dive boat was just epic,
What did that teach you?
That teach me everything about reading the water. Reading the water is, like, even for an angler, is really important, and very few people know how to do that. I can see just the way the waves are moving, this and that. You can just visualize a current and a wave and a wind, and know all the differences, in the blink of an eye. And just, my dad was so good at that. And you're talking, back in the 60s and 70s, riding around with him when naturally there was no electronics at all, and learning how to find a Spanish Galleon or a reef that's out a few miles or even further, and looking back and seeing a lighthouse or a channel marker or a tip of an island and a radio tower on land or a particular colored house, and you'd line you'd find
the angles.
You'd find your wreck, okay? And it's in the middle of nowhere, but you can see land, and then you start looking around because you want to find it again. Like, holy cow, this is really cool. I want to come back here. But how do you find it? So you look around and you see a lighthouse, and you line that lighthouse up with, it's lined up with that bigger house or a greenhouse or something like that. So you got that line there, and then you look over here and see a tip of an island lined up with that house. That, there weren't as many houses as there are now, but so now you got a line here and a line here, X marks the spot. And so you could go out there and get in the zone real quick and then idle around. If you had enough light and the water was clear enough, you would find that spot in no time. So I use that still every day in fishing.
In what way? Because now you have all the technology with the electronics. You still
have all the technology, but it's away from you. It's down on your center console. I guess people can have it on their phone, but you're out pulling in certain spots, and you're still looking. I still look back at islands to see,
I see
exactly where you're at for the location of fish. Because fish will still stay in little zones. And I remember years ago with Drew Moret, how do you know exactly where you're at? And I was like showing him a spot with the Flamingo Tower and this island, and then looking over here at this island and that island, looking at the gaps and to find something like that, and he goes, "Oh, that's cool." I didn't know, he didn't know how to find a range back in the day, and so ranges were a big deal, especially because we grew up, we did so much lobstering and snapper fishing because you're just going out trying to catch dinner, and all your lobster holes, you had to look back to see a range. You'd run a line, it's like I leave my house here, there's a little lighthouse here at the end of Plantation Yacht Harbor, Founders Park, and that was a big range, and you you could use that on many spots in the bay by putting it on this house or that building or that tower, and get you on a line. You'd run that line until you looked the other way to find another range until you come to the cross in the road, and then you'd stop and you'd idle around and say, oh, there's the little can that I'm looking for.
Right. Rob Fordyce he mentioned that on the podcast, looking for Buchanan Bank, running in the dark with his two fingers up. And then also,
sure. Yeah. Yeah, because you held a couple fingers up once you got into the zone, and looking back at Lignum Vitae and the Petersons and little gaps and stuff like that. So that's how you found shit.
Right.
Yeah.
When did you first started to be really connected and have that passion to target the fish that you wanted to target? And specifically because you're known as probably one of the world's greatest bone fishermen and tarpon fishermen too. When did that connection take place, and all of a sudden it's like, I want to do this for the rest of my life, or I'm gonna challenge myself,
Well, that's a great question, because your career sort of just,
it's so open-ended in the beginning.
Well, when you start, you need to make money. Okay, you got to make a living. So you just can't, like nowadays, everybody goes, I'm just a fly fisherman. You couldn't do that back then. You didn't already have a fancy boat and truck and house. We had nothing. You lived in your garage or with your parents or a shitty little apartment somewhere. So you took any booking you could, and that's what So that's why I love Jarrett and Richard. They grew up working on boats and digging, learning how to throw a cast net and stuff. So I did whatever. I used to go down the bridges in the first few years of my career at 4 a.m, and just go tarpon fishing. You end up finding, it was epic fun. It sucked getting up at 3 a.m, so it's like, what are you going to do? But you caught lots of big fish. And as I did that, and then the sun come up and the bite would dwindle, then I would like, screw it, everybody just did that all day, stayed around the bridges and local cuts. And I'm like, I got 4 hours to kill before I go in. So I'd run out the or something like that. And it was like, freaking fish rolling everywhere. I'm like, throwing pinfish out there. Go out there and hook twice as many. 3 times as many at the friggin' bridges,
You're right.
It was epic.
And it's shallow water, and you can see them.
Well, yeah, it was epic, and nobody there. You're not listening to semis going by all the time, And so as I did that, and then I would take people sight fishing, and especially when I was young too, we did a ton of red fishing. There weren't a lot of snooks back then. They weren't easy to find, but a ton of redfish tailing, lots of big trout, lots of tarpon everywhere in the bay, small to big. I mean, we wouldn't even fuck with tarpon running out there. We'd see them. Like, you want to see some big fish? We'd run by. Well, let's try to catch one. Well, steal my Millie bucktail. We only got 10-pound test, 8-pound test. We'd throw a bucktail there, hook a big fish, and
break it off.
See? It chew through the leader. You ain't going to land it on a little spinning rod anyway. So I was like, screw those fish, they're too big, Who wants it? Can't eat it. Screw it,
Right.
So that was a lot of the playing, was going out, just doing anything. And as my career started, I would do anything to get a customer. And plus, I didn't have the confidence of fly fishing yet or this or that. So I wanted to catch fish. So if you left at the dock at 4 a.m, you're going to catch some big-ass tarpon and a fair amount of them. Maybe catch a big-ass permit to go with it, then you might go bone fishing to go catch a slam or something like that. So as that progressed, and I was really into sight fishing, it was the funnest thing to go sight fishing, because everybody back then went to the bridges in tarpon season. And I was fishing this goofy little tournament. I forget what it was called. It was out of the fishing club in the late 80s, and I go down, and it's a 3-day booking, and mostly Bud and Mary guides. And I get these guys like on the 3rd day, and each day you switched anglers. And I get this guy, can't think of his name right now. And I go, how'd you guys do? I said, oh, it's been fun. What'd you catch? I really want to know what the hell they've caught, because maybe I know who they were fishing with, know where they were, figure out where they're catching fish. We're all at the same freaking bridges, Channel 2, Channel 5. It's a shit show back then. And it's
as Tom Evans would say, Chanel number 2 or Chanel number 5.
Oh, I like that. But anyway, we get down there early morning, we jump a fish, and we've caught one in the last 2 days, had a couple more bites and stuff. And I'm like, you guys enjoying this? Yeah, it's fun. It's sort of boring. I go, yeah, I agree. I had younger guys on the boat. And they go, you want to go out and see them and cast to them? They go, what do you mean? It's the only way you can catch them. I said, no. We can go out in the backcountry and pull around and sight fishing. There'll be, crystal clear water, big fishes laying around, small fish if you want, and we can throw freaking rubber worms or a crab or a shrimp. And I'm like, really? And I go, yeah. And I take them out there and, just end up finishing the day, just hooking a ton of fish. We might not land nothing, but you have them hooked now, because now they're seeing them and casting to them and hooking them. And that was, sight fishing was where it was at, so as you graduated and started getting better at everything and then getting people on your boat and taking them just sight fishing for regardless of what it was, I was scared shitless of a bonefish. I caught them when I was young, always by accident, trying to catch a shark as a youngster, catch a bonefish. Like, what can I do with this? I can't catch, I was catching little sharks, just cutting their jaws out and putting them around the house and stuff from in high school and stuff.
You couldn't eat a bonefish, but they scared you in what way?
As I got into guiding, how hard they were to catch, how spooky they were and stuff. I was, they were tough, and then when I started fishing tournaments, I'm like, shit, how am I going to beat Eddie Whiteman or Steve Huff or Harry Spears or any of these cats? Their guys are incredible. They're legends. And Tony Lay was a Lorelei guide back in the day, and Jack Brothers, who I want to get talking to about too, is my mentor growing up. He dated my mother, but we'll get back to that. But Jack gave me Bert Sherb's contact, or Bert my contact, and Bert wanted to fish. I think it was the spring bonefish tournament. So it was like, I think it was 88 the first year we fished, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I was barely tying flies at the time, and so I met Bert and we practiced one day, and I took him. First day of the tournament, I see Jack, and oh shit, Jack, I don't know what to do. Which way should I go? He goes, go north. Go north. Yeah, go north. Key Largo. Okay.
Have you fished up there much at this point?
Yeah, no, I fished everything. It's not that I fished. I grew up here, so I grew up in Ocean Reef. I knew all that shit up there. I fished with this guy who I won my first tournament in 91, Mike Carrier. He showed me some shit up there, and so it was, so I knew a lot of spots, but I was scared as shit to fish in the tournament. And I get Bert, and that's when the heaviest fly at the time was a jewel that everybody used. It was I think it was like a 155 milli bucktail, and Jack would take his pliers and cut the tip of the lead off and tie it on, so it's something that hit the water, sank to the bottom like a rocket, but it had a shitty little hook on it that you pulled too hard, it would bend. And so that first tournament, first day, we go out and we catch 3 releases and a weight. I'm like, fuck yeah, man, this is big. We're leading it first day of my life in a tournament. I'm like, holy cow. Well, we came in like last by the end of the tournament, but anyway, I was like,
you were
whoa,
you were the
I'm recognized,
king of the hill there for a little bit.
And it's funny because Jack Brothers, he had quit drinking, way before that, great stories about that crap too. But anyway, this tournament was, I think it was Thursday night, the second day of the tournament, they would go over to somebody's house, and no guides were invited. It was
anglers, meeting.
Only anglers, cocktail party and whatever. And but Jack was invited because his angler was running it, at the time. And Jack sees me the next morning. He goes, "I took care of your angler for you for today." I'm like, "Yeah, what? What do you mean?" I'm jacked. I'm ready to go. And he goes, "See you at the end of the day, son." Okay, Bert comes down the dock, just, oh
toast.
My God, God damn, fucking brothers, he did it to me big time. What'd he do to you? Well, he just followed me around and just kept handing me another cocktail. Great day today. Bert's like, "Oh yeah." Bert's just a great social bug and
sure.
Just a great guy and loyal and all that crap. He was useless. He was absolutely toast. He was sweating bullets in April. He just couldn't
get her
focus,
done.
Couldn't do anything. And I get to the dock and I look at Jack, and he just smiles. He has this cool little laugh, looks at me, and I'm like, I didn't say a word to him. He just, we just smiled and a little laughs and stuff, and I'm like, "You son of a bitch," and that's just a great memory of Jack. So,
what kind of a mentor was Jack to you?
Jack was a huge mentor to me. My parents were divorced, and so this was probably 84. And I'm just over at dinner, at my mom's house, maybe, no, it was probably 85. Anyway, he knew how I had my little boat, and I was always fishing and just really into it, We didn't talk much fishing, but he knew, through my mother, how much I loved going out, and, all my rods and reels are tight and, clean and, nice leaders and all that stuff. And we're having dinner and stuff. He goes, you like fishing? I go, "Yeah, it's all I want to do really now." And he goes, he stands up, opens his wallet, pulls out 4 crisp $100 bills, hands them to me. He says, "Go get your captain's license, son." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I give this opportunity to my boys, and they both used it to put it up their nose. So I expect to be paid back either way." And I'm like, "Okay." I went and got my freaking captain's license, and I was just so thankful that he said we needed some new young blood in the business, and so I go get my captain's license, and he says, "I don't care how you pay me back. I don't care if it's $5 a time when I see you." I go, okay. And then he sends me a charter, like $225 a day, all day. I'm like, I was mating. I'd quit working for my father by then on great terms, had a great life with that, but I just got into offshore fishing, and on my days off, I went out in my skiff. So, I was at the Lorelei, and I see Jack driving by because he parked by the fishing club, docked, and Jack, he'd stop in his white Cadillac, pull up. "Hey, son, how you doing?" It's great. And I opened my wallet, give him $100 bills. It was all right, and I was like paid off in a few weeks. He'd send me a charter, and like, shit, I got, a $50 tip, I got, a couple $100 and give him $100, I got him paid off right away. So Jack was the biggest in my life. Naturally my father was, but that's my father, he was my biggest mentor, of the work ethic and growing up with him, learning all the waters and fishing a tiny bit with him, right. But not much fishing,
I think a lot of people, or a lot of guides and anglers too, have always really had Steve Huff in such high esteem.
Steve who?
And I know that you've gotten really pretty close to him over the years. In your early years when Steve was around, what kind of inspiration was he to you and fellow guides?
Well, he was one of the biggest. Steve, he had won everything, and
such an iconic figure for everybody.
He really was, absolute professional in everything he did. You didn't understand some of the shit he did. He would leave the dock. If he could leave at 6 a.m., he left at 6 a.m. If he had to be back at the dock at 5 in the afternoon, he'd be back at 4:40, 4:55. Like, what the fuck's he doing out there?
Right.
Where'd he go?
The ghost.
I was famous for leaving last in the Bonefish tournaments. I mean, I'm like, screw it, I'm not going to get out there and sit in a spot and just wait there and look at the friggin' stars. I'd like to get out there and shut the engine off and
start fishing.
Start pulling like every day. But
you weren't worried of someone stealing your spot that you wanted to go to?
No, because that already shit happened. It didn't happen, but it somebody would pull in, relatively close, but that would mess your head up,
right.
Seeing another boat, right. Shit, it's Eddie White.
So Nicky, just a little intel on all this. When we were fishing the Bonefish tournaments with Hoover and I, we would leave really early and get out to Shell Key, stake out. It was lines in at 7, but we'd be there like an hour before, and we're laying on the boat looking at the stars, like Timmy's just saying. You're waiting for lines in. And you'd want to get to your spot so that you were there, so no one else could be in that spot. Because if you got there late, there'd be a boat there, staked out with their navigation lights on, waiting for the buzzer.
Well, that's what I was asking Timmy. About going to the spot late. You risk.
I'm going to work. And the tournaments, and I'm watching the boats coming through Whale Harbor, like, fuck, they're looking at them go, there's a boat there, there's a boat there.
And there's all tournament boats.
Oh, yeah, they're all tournaments, but I'm like, I got like, Bert Sherb or Hyacinth or somebody waiting at the dock for me, just like wanting to friggin' go, I'm like, I'm watching all these boats, going out to the ocean, and then I see all the, the running lights or their anchor lights are, and I'm like, well, okay, that's taking because in the mornings only last a little bit,
right.
So you only need a spot for 30 minutes, then you're waiting for, then your shadow's 100 feet long and you got to pull a certain way. You really had to think about where you're going to go, what the conditions were, what the lights, tides, this and that. If it was a bright morning, you had to make sure you started, pulling into the sun because your shadow is going to be casting through the horizon,
right.
So you really had to start thinking on all these little things and being there early in the morning. I did it, but I didn't enjoy this laying out there. It was okay,
right.
But you're nervous, you're wanting to go fish, not to sit there for an hour and 20 minutes, because it took you 10 minutes to get to a spot. So I started going much later,
Well, I interrupted you. You were talking about Steve Huff.
Yeah, but the inspiration about Steve is it was his work ethic, how hard he fished and how hard he pulled and everything. And I remember days with Hyacinth in the boat, where I'm just exhausted. These tournaments were brutal. They were all 5-dayers back in the day, besides the spring Bonefish tournament. So you were just you're burnt out. At the end of each day, you're pulling your ass off, but it'll be blowing 20, 25. And you have to pull into the wind because you can't see downwind because of the glare, because they're on an east hard wind. You got to pull where you can see. And I'm like, I pull into a spot and I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do? It's going to be like brutal. I'm exhausted. And I'm like, what'd Steve Huff do? He just pull into the wind so you can see the fish. Hardest shit for an angler to cast, but the only way you're going to see them, But that's how, I thought of Steve a lot. I still do. But in all those tournaments, I always thought of Steve. What would Steve do? Grind away. Would fish until the last second. Even if you're not even close to winning, never give up. So it was, And Steve become a good friend. And love the guy. Love his kids and love Patty. It's just fun to talk to that dude.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, a couple of years ago, I want to bring it to a funny story, talking about Bert Sherb. a couple of years ago,
we'll bring Mary Beth in on this one.
I was on Instagram and I saw all these photos of this man that was snaking through this mud in Lake Ingram. Tell me about that story.
Well, that's my best Instagram shot yet.
Yes.
27,000 hits, you know. Normally if I get 250, big deal. You know, I could put a pretty girl in it and get 1,000 maybe. But with Bert crawling in the mud, God, it wasn't that long ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. And Bert and I, you know, we had got divorced 1997 or 8. You know, we had fished for 8 or 10 years hard in tournaments, and it just started not having fun. And greatest guy in the world, but I was like, Bert, you know, we need to you know, take a break. This is just for a break from the tournaments. Just still fish the same days. Let's go do something different. Let's go to Key West. He's never been to the lower Keys and fished, you know, been fishing here forever. Let's just go have some fun. Let's get our relationship back on track, you know. No, I got to fish a tournament, you know, with business. They got to know that I am coming down for a tournament and this and that. I go, they don't need to know where if you're not in the tournament. You can just still fish the same exact days, but let's just go get our shit together and have fun. You know, let's just go lower Keys and catch a permit or a bonefish or a tarpon somewhere else in this little area. You know, because the longer you fish, the more it shrinks, you know.
Right.
The smaller it gets. So it was fun going to Key West and Biscayne Bay and all that stuff. But anyway, so we got divorced, and I think it was like 97, 98. And I gave him Kevin Guerin for the Bonefish tournament and Drew Moret for the Hawley tournament. Those are the 2 tournaments I fished with him. And he was pissed. You know, but I gracefully, to this day, really try to do it ethically about, you know, we need to get our life, you know, fishing is about, to me, is about having fun. Even tournaments are still brutal, but you still got to have fun. Just stories keep coming with Bert in my head. It's just like, and that's not even close to as funny. What I'm thinking is way funnier. But anyway.
But we'll get to that next.
So I get a call a few years ago and Bert and I just, you know, he's fishing with other guides all these years, you know, and we're still good friends, and we're starting to fish a little bit again, but he's fishing with Brewer a lot and some other, you know, Kevin Guerin a ton and all that, you know. I get this call like at 3:00 in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. I had my day off. I changed the oil of my boat and cleaned it and just got out of the shower, laid down with MB to watch like Judge Judy, you know. And she goes, take a break, relax, you know. And you know, you can't relax around her sometimes. She wants, you know, you look at this house and it's just immaculate as always, you know. So so I'm always having to do something. And I get this call and it's Judy Sherb. Bert's ran aground and he needs help. Okay, what's Kreger up to? Have him call Kreger. Have him call, you know, Kevin. Have him call his guides, you know.
He fired me.
He fired me. I fired him basically, but you know, but anyway, I'm like, what the shit, you know? I'm like, dang, you know, it's like, and I was like, you know, I'm not done with my boat yet, you know. I'm doing maintenance on it, you know, and Mary Beth, who's that? It's Judy Sherb, you know, and I says, call the park rangers, and so let me call the park rangers. So I hang up, I know some of the park rangers, and I can't find who I want to talk to. I get a hold of one. So this is the thing, you know, he's stuck in Lake Ingram, he says. He's high and dry. It's getting late, you know, it's, you know, mid-March and it's windy as shit out. And I don't know what, you know, can you send a boat out there? Is he in distress? Yeah, he's friggin' 75 years old and he's stuck on a flat, you know. You know, it's going to get dark in a couple hours. You know, can you go out? Well, as long as he's not sinking, sounds like he's okay. You know, like, yeah, but I don't want the guy to spend the night out there. They wouldn't do shit. I'm like, you're kidding me. You know, I'm like, what the hell are you, you know? And I respect the hell out of all the law enforcements and stuff like that for the most part. But I was like, that really irked me. I was like, you know, so I get a call from the kid that I actually fished like the day before, a friend of his. And I told Bert that day, it was blown so hard, you know, 25 plus in mid-March. I go, listen, go out to the jam your stick in the mud and just sit there for the day and see if something swims by. It's really shitty weather. Don't, I want to go to the like we used to go to in the past. I'm like, Bert, it's March. We usually did that in May and June, July. This is March.
This is a seasonal thing, this fishing thing.
Yeah, exactly. What is blowing out of the northeast? And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I'm sitting in bed and I'm like, fuck, I can't let this guy sit out there overnight. I remember Hank Brown sitting out there in the middle of the night and ended up sitting in the water all night because the bugs are so bad. And then I'm thinking, I'd rather the bugs eat me than a shark or a croc come and grab me. I was like, it's just hell either way, So I'm like, shit, so the boat's all gassed up. All I need is some ice and beer and I'm good to go, and so James is out in his boat and I go, James, where you at? He goes, I'm in Islamorada getting ready to get by the Lorelei. I go, just stay there. We got to go rescue. Because what do you mean? This is Bert, sure. James knows Bert a little bit. And so I grab a 12-pack, some ice, haul ass down there. Traffic is like, it almost took me longer from here to the Lorelei than getting here to the frigging Cape in the boat, So we get in the boat, we blast over. It's rough as shit, but downwind, and we, haul ass in my Maverick HPX, the 18-footer, so it's a pretty comfortable boat. And I find out that he's not in Lake Ingram. So East Cape Canal, I mean, it's straight as it can get. And then it's a sharp left turn, and it's a straight shot to Lake Ingram. He goes, I went up this twisty thing, and I thought it was East Cape. He went up in Brown's Cut, which is just as crooked as it could get, And I'm looking at the tides, and he got stuck at X amount of days. It got stuck on high tide, okay?
Oh, no.
So I get over there, and there's no water. And it's tricky to get into Brown's Cut. And I actually talked to Richard Black. I haven't been in the Brown's Cut on low tide in a long time, and he does that shit a lot for the redfish and snooks. Yeah, go down past it further, and then head up, along the shoreline, and you'll get in no problem. So, James is like 16. Hey, have a beer. Dad, no, I don't want a beer. Okay, you're no fun. So we get up there, and I run up in there about a half a mile, and I know it's going to open up. So I know he's got to be where it opens up. I think he's going to be to the right, but he took some freaking left turn, which made no sense because it's so twisty up in there and all these little cuts, So I shut down before the opening, and you hear this freaking whistle blowing. I'm like, So we idle down. There he is. 150 feet from the nearest drop of water, 3 feet out of the water, the boat. Big tides over there. There's, 3.5, 4 foot tides, and especially with the wind blowing out, blew all the freaking water out of the area. And I'm like, holy shit. And I got these guys that fished with them that were, anyway, I'll try to be nice. Nice guys. And father and son. And we get there, and I'm like, you can't walk. Because it's that brown muck. It was horrible. And I go, throw an anchor. Why throw an anchor? You're yelling at him. I go, throw an anchor, tie it off. Make sure you tie it off. Because Bert would throw an anchor and not hook it up, knowing Bert. So I make sure he ties it off to something, I go, what about setting it? Don't worry about setting it. The boat's not going to go nowhere. The thing's going to sink. The anchor's going to sink in that mud. It's in a confined area, so wind ain't going to dictate shit. And so the kid, the scrawny little guy, he's like 19 or 20 years old. And next thing you know, he jumps in the mud. He crawls. It takes him 15 minutes to crawl through the boat. And it's nasty. And then he tries to jump on the boat. Whoa, you're taking a bath before you get in this boat. And I told him to put everything in bags, take as much clothes off as possible, put him in anything that's dry. They had dry bags, and just bring that with you, tie it to your back. And it took Bert and his friend, they're in their 70s, 40 minutes, 45 minutes to crawl 150 feet.
In that mud.
And I made that kid take my anchor rope out there and help pull them in,
Oh, my God.
But they were snaking through like a snake.
Oh,
like an alligator, a human alligator.
I mean, it's like being in quicksand, but you're not going to sink and die, but it's
You're on your
it's
belly.
hell week. I mean, it's like, it'd be a really fun thing to watch people do, because it takes, I mean, it's nasty. Plus they're old, they're, you're worried about stress and shit like that. And we get him back in the boat, and there's that great picture of Bert laying there. Just all you could see is this face that didn't have mud on. The rest of his eye was completely mud, And then naturally I posted the shit out of all this stuff and drove him nuts. That was my best thing ever.
Bert said, "Don't tell anybody," and you told the world.
The world, yeah. I'm gonna repost it now.
Look, you've had a great relationship and a great run with a couple of really, really significantly big fishermen. Carl Hyacin, you and he won 6 fall fly bonefish tournaments. I'd like to have you speak about Carl and also about Tom Evans.
Sure.
Possibly the greatest big game fly fisherman of all time.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Carl. Obviously everybody knows he's a world famous author.
Yeah.
And one of the funniest guys on the planet.
Yes.
And a world class angler.
Yes. Carl, Carl used to fish with Branham. They grew up together, great friends. And fishing down here when he was living, he was fishing with John Kipp a lot, great guide. But John wouldn't fish a spot that he thought somebody fished 3 weeks ago. He wouldn't fish a spot that he thinks somebody saw a fish there or something like that. So Carl sort of like found me because I had won some tournaments and stuff like that. And we hit it off and we started fishing, play fishing, and then we got into tournaments. And the great thing about Carl, he's not a good caster in a fly cast. Okay, he's not have a good loop or this or that, but his passion and his focus is, you can't find anybody better to stand on the bow for you. That's what you want when you're fishing any day, is somebody that's going to stand up there while you're pulling your ass off. The other thing Carl had that was better than anybody I fished was eyes. I think growing up with Branham and them coming down here when they were 16 years old, as soon as they could drive, and going fishing, they loved the passion for bonefish was unbelievable. Carl was good at everything. Any fish that you put on in front of him, he could catch. He could see him really good, got the fly in the right zone, and knew how to manipulate the fly to get him to bite. I learned a lot off Carl, the way he stripped for bonefish from Bob, I assume. And then I was developing my own flies at the time, and Branham only used a epoxy fly,
right?
And which actually I won my very first tournament with an epoxy fly, like a copy of his that Borsky tied for me in '91. And but Carl was, his eyes, his just loved fishing the guy. Naturally listened to the stories but he was just very competitive. By 9 a.m, he'd already eaten a chocolate bar and drank 2 iced teas, so he was freaking amped. He was just, he's ready to go. He's pulling his hair like, you wear a visor, like I'm surprised there's hair left, but he was like, he'd like pulling his hair, like, where are they at, Timmy? I don't know. But he'd spot the fish half the time, if not more, or he'd see a boat over there, that's Harry or Steve or Branham or somebody, and I'm like, fuck, how can you see that fucking far? I'm like, he had great eyes, and he wasn't a great caster. I mean, he sucked, but he got it there somehow. And I would set him up and seen flies bounce off his head, my head, still make it out there and catch a fish, And the thing about tournaments, as you hear all these stories about people catching fish that you're like, shit, this guy's going to be tough to beat. Well, that person never won a tournament and still hasn't won a tournament. You hear these stories about people catching fish or that captain catching fish, but they, when it comes to the game, they don't win. It's just, but for some reason, Carl was so teachable and so intense in fishing, which, made my drive even harder because he just, he was never took a break. If we ate something, it's on the fly.
So he inspired you to come up to his level of intensity.
Yeah, no, my intensity was there, but I was very, I didn't start, I don't know when I started winning tournaments, not until the mid 90s or something with him, I already won a few tournaments in the 90s.
So you were a refined tournament winner already, but
Carl and I just had gel. I enjoyed fishing him. There wasn't a lot of pressure on me. He put the pressure on himself, but he was really good at bone fishing.
Right.
Freaking great. And he'd have little mistakes of clearing the line or this or that. He was all over the place at times, but he got the freaking fly there somehow. It wasn't pretty. And by then I've had flies that we had just tremendous confidence in. I remember Huff telling me, showing him a fly and how they're just eating the shit out of it, and he goes, well, the hook's too small. Okay. Yeah, probably because
the gap,
a little too small. A few of them got smushed, pulled the hooks aren't too many. And that's back when the only thing you used was a 3407, 40 or 20, and so I took that to heart, okay. And started using bigger hooks. And then with hooks, I started using the Gamakatsu SE15 1.0, which was bulletproof to this day. It's a shorter shank hook, harder to tie a fly on, but sharp as shit. You never had to sharpen it, and the mustads you had to sharpen.
Right.
But Carl just was just epic and catching fish. He fought fish great. As long as we could get him on the reel, it
was good.
It was good, and we caught. We won six fall flies,
and then the all tackles.
4 all tackles,
right. That's
and we won one of those all tackles on fly also. And the only other person that did that was Huff. I forget who he was fishing, famous guy.
So you beat the bait guys on fly?
Yeah, and Steve Huff was the only other one that had done that. And that's back then it was like Jim Bocord and Croker and all these guys.
The great
fishing.
Bait guys of all time.
Right.
They beat him on fly.
And
that's unbelievable.
And I remember when Huff won it. It took me a long time to get in that all tackle tournament. It was a badass tournament. Brewer won it with Ricky Moeller, and I sort of was like telling some of these guys where I had fun, release fish and this and that, because I couldn't get in the tournament. I couldn't find a guy. Fred Troxel was fishing with Michael Guerin, great guys. And I'm like, and Mary Beth started working the tournaments, like maybe trying to find me an angler, hanging out with Fred. Fred was running the tournaments, one of the greatest people ever. And finally, Carl and I hooked up in it, later on in life, probably, I don't know, late 90s, maybe 2000, And so we start off, with our tailing fish, and we go out there and, we catch a 9-pounder. So anytime you caught a fish on fly, it was added a pound to it.
Right. So the points were substantially.
Oh, I got
right.
you.
So if you caught one on a jig, it was X amount of points, but bait was the lowest. But it was a bait tournament, but it was the all tackle. So you could use plug rod, spinning rod, fly rod, and bait, So when catching fish on all 4 tackles was a big deal,
Right.
I never won that part of it, and we tried. Putting a plug rod in Heisen's hand. I mean, oh my gosh, the shit that Carl would say on the boat. I mean, I can't say none of that on the air here. I mean, even if you put R on it, it would still be bad. But Carl, plug rod, 12 o'clock. You got him, A jig is like the easiest way to catch a bonefish, especially a release. I mean, the easiest way, throwing a jig. 9 o'clock. What the fuck? What are you doing, Carl? Oh, damn. Why'd it go over there? I reel it up. Bird's nest. I'm like, fucking put that thing up. God.
Who's it remind you of, Nicky?
He's not worse than my dad, I'll tell you that.
So we tried, and we probably blew tournaments trying to catch the all tackle, but with a fly rod, he was just, of stripping that fly and getting the hookups and stuff. But we ended up, we were just on fire. Anything we threw that fly to in that all tackle, we caught. And I remember that morning, I had a morning spot that nobody fished, really close. So we'd, it would be lines in it, say 7. And Carl and I would sit there, and he's just nervous as hell. He's like already drinking a couple teas or coffee or whatever. Where are we leaving? I go, 10 till. 10 till, okay. Where are we going? Well, we're going to such and such. It's going to take us 5 minutes to get there. Okay. And we'd pull up there, and I'd pull his fly line out and clean it. I already had the leaders all set up and stuff. And we'd pull up there, and I go, there he is. And whop, and he hooks one, catches one right away, like a 9.5 pounder. I'm like, oh, that's 10.5 pounds. All right. We tank it, take it back to the Lorelei, weigh it. And we run out to Holiday Owl on the ocean side, and there's 4 boats fishing. We called it Dave's World because Dave Boras would fish out there by the sandbar and Harbor Lights. And it was a great area to catch fish, in that 10-pound range and up. And he goes, where are you going to fit in? I go, I'm going to go right in the middle. It says, you got everybody fishing the perimeters, but there's a deeper spot in the middle of this big flat, and nobody's close to it. It says, we'll slide up in there. And he goes, okay. And we pull up in there. There's a few fish tailing. He throws over there, whack. Hook up, and it's a big fish. I thought it was a really big fish. I thought it was 12 pounds. We net it. I'm like, holy shit, look at this short, fat fucker. I'm like, holy cow. I tank it, don't weigh it or anything, And we pull off the fly because you only allow 2 weight fish. Sure. In a tournament, it's like 8:30 in the morning. And Boras sees me at the end of the day. He goes, what were you guys doing? Why would you leave? I go, well, that was our second weight fish. And his eyes rolls back in his head, like, oh, God, you guys suck.
Right.
And then we go off fly fishing, and we catch a ton of fish on fly that day. And we end up smoking everybody. And then Bocor tries to change the tournament again, which he did after Huff won it. So it was always like competitive with these guys. You wanted to beat certain captains and certain anglers. And Bocor, who's, was one of the great legends, he never won the all tackle.
That's crazy.
That was the only tournament that guy won.
He won all the bay bones.
He won the bay bones, and then he started a spring 3-day all tackle, which I never fished, or Carl and I never, because tournaments back in the day. The thing about tournaments were that they were built to give us business.
Right.
They were built
during the off season.
In the off season, so by the end of May, this town started emptying out. Still does, But now it's different because now you got summer people and everything gets rented out, every house from the block. But back in those days, the Albrights and brothers and Cecil Keith and, Clarence Slow and them, and they promoted these tournaments to get people to stay and fish, to keep the guiding community busy, because fishing was awesome. So that's why the tarpon tournaments were started, those 3 tarpon tournaments,
sure.
The Hawley ladies and the Gold Cup, and then the fall, September and October tournaments. That's give us a little jolt of income.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Tom Evans. Tom, as anybody inside this world knows, what a great world-class tarpon fisherman he's been. Catching all those world records, and I think he's got a couple that will stand the test of time.
Sure,
possibly
absolutely. Some of the greatest fish
ever caught. He's got
a
194-pound tarpon on 12-pound test.
Yeah.
He's got the 191 on 16. His 273-pound blue marlin on 16-pound test with a fly rod is just outrageous.
God, who knows how many fish he caught on with Dean Butler.
Right.
Over there. That guy. We could talk the rest of the night about Dean and Tom.
Yeah, forever. But he's got all the records, all the billfish records.
Yeah.
But he called me one day when I'm in the Lower Keys, and he was up here, and I know that he used to fish with you before he would go to Home Assassin fish.
I was his glorified babysitter. As Tanya, his wife, would call me. Thank you for letting us come down and babysitting Tom for a couple of weeks.
So I want to talk about your relationship with Tom, but I want, in specific, he called me one time after fishing, and we were still out there late, and the voicemail goes, call me. I saw the fat man fly today.
Oh, that's me being jerked over? I wasn't sure it was a homosexual fat person, me getting friggin' watching me get jerked over like a rag doll. And that's like another Huff story with Del Brown, same size fish.
Right.
That world record that we were trying to break. And, Steve tells the story how he gaffs and it jerks him out of the boat. And there goes the boat idling away with Del just looking back at his captain standing on a friggin'
Doesn't know how to
what
control the throttle.
Steve's yelling, come get me. Yeah. Wind up your line as you come get me.
So anyway, this back up. He's fishing with you, trying to catch an 127.5 pound tarpon on an 8-pound test, and you're fishing with him.
Yeah. So fishing with Tom with light line was always a joy, because no one does that shit. And so we're out there late in the afternoon, and we got big fish around, and we hook up this fish, and he explodes. We keep him on. And he runs about, a couple hundred yards and makes 4 big bombs every couple hundred feet, just like, holy shit, this is the one, And then Tom's like, he's walking back to the center of the boat and opening his tackle box and getting his fighting glove on, and this fish is just cruising to the horizon, which we did a lot, on just a 80, 90 pound fish or an 8 pound. You can't do shit, you just let that sucker run. And he was just calm, go back to his little tackle box. He wouldn't keep the glove in his pocket or something where you can just pull it out.
It's too easy.
Yeah, so he'd go back and this thing's just sailing and gets his fighting glove on. And so we go off fighting this fish, and to speed it up, after 40 minutes, now we got the fish in a routine. We go through a channel, get them out in a lake near an edge, and we got the fish going around the boat. And each time he gets closer and closer, and we're 40, 45 minutes into the fight. And I got the gaff out, and he goes, a couple more spins, Tim. I think you could stick them. Okay, yeah, I agree, And I got the boat in gear still, which you can. And not like in a tournament where you got to throw it in neutral to grab a leader. He was like, so I'm like, fuck, I'm so excited. I'm just like, man.
You've heard about this for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I've heard like Brewer, years ago getting jerked. Or other people, anybody that did it, seriously got yanked out of the boat.
And you're confident in this fish making the world record?
Yeah. I think it's a legit fish. I don't know. I've never killed them. All right.
But you're thinking it's 130, 140?
Yeah, no, we think it's going to make the mark. Especially Tom thinks it is, because he's killed, more than I. He's not killed a ton of fish, but he's killed 15 fish. So he knows what a big fish is, and this is it was a pretty good fish. What we call 130s. It might have only been 100. I don't freaking know. We'll never. I got the scale right up there hanging on the wall. I was supposed to give it to Tom as a Christmas ornament. It's got a perfect hole in it from the gaff mark. So I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, Tom, a couple more spins, a little closer every time. I run up to the bow. He goes, I think you can get him, Timmy. I go up there and like, fuck yeah, just dead center of the back. Wham! And I hook that thing perfect, this like right in front of almost right over the dorsal, anywhere you can get a gaff in is a good shot when you're doing something like this. And we're just by ourselves, And since the boat's going forward at a dead idle, that gaff, he swam under the boat and the gaff hits the edge of the boat. I could have probably held on, but the gaff would have broken off, and it was still. So it actually just catapulted me out of the boat. Instantaneous. I was gone. And there's the boat going over me. And I remember Steve telling him, how he kept and he's been towed around a couple times with Sandy and stuff, how he just had to keep his head down to keep his hat on, his glasses on. So I'm like, before I go, I take my dip out, my phone out, anything. You got plenty of time. Yeah, something's going to happen.
You're going.
And I gap this thing. I'm out. Like a rag doll. Bam. I'm like, holy shit, And I'm like, this is fucking cool, man. and I don't know many things. I've won a bunch of tournaments. I was probably one of the most excited I've ever been on a boat just sticking this big fish. And then the fish goes and swims back alongside the boat. I'm like 100 feet behind the boat now. I pop up And I grew up diving, so I was never worried about a thing, and got my hat and my glasses. I kept my head down like Huff says you're supposed to do and shit, and I come up, woo! And I look at, there's fucking Tom idling away, just like Del Brown there. Tom, put it in neutral, and he's going into the wind, thank God, And I go, wind up the slack, and I'm swimming with this fish and coming up to the boat, the fish is like, I think he's dead, And I swim up to the boat, and now there's 20 feet of line wrapped around the prop. And I'm like, shit, so I don't want the fish to break off, but I got him on the gaff. There's a big loop, and he goes, Timmy, it's in the engine. I'm like, oh, Tom, I mean, seriously, So I get there, I spin the prop, and I get all that line off the prop. Wind it up. He winds it up, he's holding the fish, And now I, shimmy up on the boat, and now he's sitting, in the seat, the back, I don't know, seat in my boat, just the cushions in the back of the boat. Hop in the boat, go to grab the gaff. Where the fuck's the fish? He goes, he swam away. I go, what do you mean he swam away? All you had to do was hold the fucking gaff up a little bit, Well, I guess we should have kept the barb on there. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I was friggin' furious, but I was so excited I couldn't get mad at him. I'm like, God damn it, Tom, really? I for the next 20 minutes, I had my GPS on. I did a grid back and forth.
Trying to find the fish.
Yeah. He swam away. Somebody's going to catch one with a big hole in its back. I bet you it lived. It just, I was just like, but I didn't say anything to Tom. Sure, I was.
Shit happens.
Yeah. I was.
That's all you can say.
Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah. What would you like to add towards the end of this podcast that we haven't covered? We talked about your mentors, your growing up down here, your connection with Bonefish, Tom.
God, there's so much to talk about. We haven't even started
I know,
yet.
There's so much.
We can do a second one.
Yeah, but, I met my wife in K-Sal on a diving expeditions back in the early 80s. We're coming up next week for our 30th anniversary. And so it's just with my wife and 30
James
years.
is a great fisherman.
My James is coming up on his third year of guiding and killing it and doing the bay boat shit because he sees what's going on with the Tarpon season trying to fly fish here. I came home yesterday from fishing, slick calm, and it was like there wasn't a spot to take. There were so many boats. This is, early February, and there was I counted 9 boats on my way home.
Oh, God.
I talked to a guy at the gas it up, and he's like, I couldn't find a spot to fish. Our fishing grounds have shrunk, especially early season. And you never had that problem before, but it's just like so many people are into it. But anyway, my daughter, my kids are the biggest thing. I started off in the mid-90s, fishing so many days. I guided average of 275 plus days a year, then another 40 plus days with family and friends just goofing off, and then I started taking weekends off after I started having kids. March through June, I took most of the weekends off. Because like the intro with Tom speaking, we broke this, we broke that, we broke marriages, and I saw the marriages break, from both sides, both ends of the boat,
right,
all guides and anglers, and I'm like, shit, you'd fish every day, and the only day you got off would be a weather day, so I 95 or something like that. I'm like, shit, I want to watch my kids grow up. I want to go to soccer practice and baseball practice and all this stuff, baseball practice, and watch these kids do this stuff, and it's just like, it was just, I'm so glad I did that. No one did that shit back then.
Right.
Taking time off, in the busy time of the season, people are still grinding, 100 days in a row out, and you're praying for
weather.
Yeah, you're praying for
exactly.
Get a day off.
Yeah,
to get a day off, and then there's a shit day and the guy goes, I don't want to sit in my room with my wife. I want to go fishing. I don't care how bad it is. Let's go out. You want to go? Sure. So you'd go, so stuff like that. But I did want to mention, we talked about, trailering, the Key Largo back in the day. Trailing was something that started right at my era. I think it was probably Huff and Harry trailering to Key Largo, and that's probably late 80s. They probably started it earlier than that, but I got involved in that early. I was, one of the first trailer guides in Islamorada. I'm sure like somebody like Eddie Whiteman, but nobody did that back then. But we got these Silver King boats and nice trailers, and the docks at the Lorelei where you'd go down there every morning. Your boat was full of dirt and bar glasses and plastic shit, and so we started trailering our boats every day. But those days, Steve Huff, Harry Spears, Bus Bergman. I don't know if you remember Bus?
For sure. He used to pull his boat from the middle of the boat.
Yeah. Oh, did he? I don't know. Bus
Bergman. No, excuse me. Oh. That was Reinemann.
Okay. Reinemann didn't pull from the middle of the boat. He had a classic. Reinemann is on there too, but he didn't trailer, but you had Mike Collins, John Kipp, Eddie Whiteman that did, then Michael Guerin started showing up, and then Kevin, naturally Brewer. And so that was a really cool time in the wintertime that we all spent up at Carey's Fort Marina, which is just south of Ocean Reef. That was a big boat ramp, and then they closed that down. We found other holes to put in, and then Penny Camp. So it was really cool having that little collection of guides, and doing that. And then the Lower Keys, I started going down there in the late 80s. And I just love to say, you hear the stuff of people about slicing tires and this and that, and I could give a shit that, Branham and Croker and all these guys coming out here. I love those guys. Those guys were the best, Rick Murphy, there's a few other, but going to the Lower Keys, I remember going down there, putting at Sugarloaf and Timmy Carlisle, just
classic.
Just, and I was a young punk, I was down there, and he was just, hey, I'm from Islamorada. Oh, cool, man, great, and I'd ask him about like a tide, and he would help me out. And then Key West with the three guys that were there was Jeffrey Cardenas, Marshall Cutchins, and Simon Becker.
Sure.
Yep.
And they had this little dock, in Garrison Bight. And they didn't know me from shit, and I'd pull up there and buy some shrimp and crabs, and they were all so welcoming, I just like, all right, you hear stories of guides moving from,
one zip code to another.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Basically, yeah, no, exactly right. And they never saw that, and I didn't ever give a shit about any of the Miami guides coming down here. They were, the big names to me. It was classic. But I just grew up, like you say, when you live in Islamorada, things shrunk so quick that you just wanted to see new bottom. So I had so much fun going to the Lower Keys. I would dig the Lower Keys. I don't do it much anymore because of freaking traffic.
Yeah.
You're scared to go down there to put in the 7 Mile Bay of Honda, but there's not a damn spot to.
Right.
Before, you never had to worry about that, but now with traffic, it's just like, oh, I miss it so much knowing what's going on down there right now. You know how much I love Bonefish.
Yeah. It's coming back for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you that some of my best days of fishing have been with you. Yeah. We did a TV show together. We caught a big bonefish and the tarpon fishing that we've done and whacked all those fish out in the Gulf. And
that day is probably the most big fish and more fish I've ever landed in a day. It was.
I heard all about it. Don't tell me again.
Oh no, I thought about that day before yesterday. I was out there fumbling around for cobias and shit. And I'm like, gosh, it's really tempting to go a little further to look for the poons, It's just like, gosh.
We mohawked the poon that day.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. But look, you've always been, like I said, a great inspiration to a lot of people with your expertise, your integrity, your knowledge, and your ability to win the big ones for many, many years. And you've been a great friend to all of us. And I just want to thank you for what you've given me. And coming onto the podcast and telling your story.
Well, thanks. No, thanks. I'd love to get you in the boat.
I know. We got to fish, and we'll do another podcast because I'm sure you have many more stories.
Oh,
but
God.
I'd love to fish with you, Tim, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
It.
Yeah.
Way to go, brother.
Love you.
Yeah.
And now we're going to eat some cobia that you caught yesterday, right?
Yeah. Yeah, cobias and steak kebabs, a little rum.
Perfect. Papa's Pilar.
Lots
Hell
of
yeah.
papas. Here we go.
All right, Arn.
All right, dog.
All right, man.
Yeah, man.
Love you. Love you guys.
See ya.
What I saw is West Side Story. What I saw is just a